Welcome to Secrets Uncovered. I'm Derek, and this is where we pull back the curtain on the darkest corners of human nature. Every week, we dive deep into the stories behind the world's most chilling criminals, the ones who haunted our streets, hid in plain sight, and left devastation in their wake. These aren't just headlines. These are the stories of victims who deserve to be remembered, families who fought for justice, and the investigators who refused to give up. This is where the secrets come to light. In the mid-1980s, the streets of south-central Los Angeles were haunted by a predator who moved like a ghost. For more than 2 decades, this killer would strike, vanish, then strike again, leaving behind a trail of bodies and a community crying out for justice. His name was Lonnie David Franklin Jr., but the world would come to know him by a name far more chilling, the Grim Sleeper. This is the true story of a man who lived among us as a neighbor, a mechanic, even a churchgoer, all while hiding the darkest secret imaginable. Lonnie David Franklin Jr. was born on August 30th, 1952, in South Central Los Angeles. He grew up in the same neighborhoods where he would later hunt his victims, a place where poverty and violence were all too common. To those who knew him, Franklin seemed like an ordinary working man. He enlisted in the United States Army in 1974 and was stationed in Stuttgart, Germany. After his military service, he returned to Los Angeles married and had 2 children. He worked for years as a mechanic at the Los Angeles City Garage, a job that gave him steady employment and a pension. By all appearances, he was retired, middle class, unremarkable. But what no one knew was that beneath this ordinary facade lurked something monstrous. The first hint of the evil to come appeared in January of 1984, when 21-year-old Sharon Alicia Dismuke was found murdered. Though Franklin would never be officially convicted of this killing, prosecutors strongly suspected he was responsible. It was a year later, in August 1985, that the pattern truly began. On August 10, 1985, 29-year-old Deborah Ronette Jackson was discovered in an alley near West Gage Avenue. She had been shot 3 times in the chest. Her body was wrapped in a carpet, her face serene despite the violence of her death. Deborah had a family. She had people who loved her, and her murder would mark the beginning of a reign of terror that would stretch across more than 2 decades. The killer did not stop. In August 1986, 35-year-old Henrietta Wright was found dead. Just 2 days later, 36-year-old Thomas Sylvester Steele became the only known male victim, shot and killed. The following year, the pace quickened. Barbara Bethune-Ware, just 23, was found in January of 1987. April brought the death of 25-year-old Bernita Rochelle Sparks. October saw 26-year-old Mary Catherine Lowe murdered. In January 1988, 22-year-old LaCrika Jefferson was killed. Each victim was young and black. Many struggled with addiction. Some worked in the sex trade, and all lived in the margins of society where their disappearances often went unnoticed by the wider world. The killer exploited these vulnerabilities, targeting women he believed would not be missed. The murders were brutal, but not random. The killer used a .25 caliber handgun to shoot most of his victims. Many were also sexually assaulted. Their bodies were dumped in alleys behind buildings, left like trash for someone else to find. But the killer was not infallible. In November 1988, he made a mistake. He attacked Anitra Washington, shot her, and left her for dead. Anitra survived. She would spend the next decades carrying the memory of her attacker's face, never knowing if she would live to see him caught. And then, just as suddenly as they had begun, the murders stopped. From 1988 to 2000, the Grim Sleeper went silent. 14 years passed without a confirmed killing. The task force that had been formed to investigate the murders was eventually disbanded. The case went cold. Some assumed the killer had moved away, been imprisoned for other crimes, or perhaps died, but he was still there, living among them, waiting. The nickname Grim Sleeper came from this long period of inactivity. The grim because of the death he left behind. The sleeper because he appeared to have gone dormant, like a nightmare that had finally faded away. But nightmares have a way of returning. In December 2000, the nightmare awakened. 43-year-old Georgia Mae Thomas was found murdered. A year later, Princess Chianne Berthomieu, just 14 years old, became his youngest victim. In 2003, 35-year-old Valerie Louise McCorvey was killed. 2 women, Ayala Gibodzada Marshall and Rolania Morris, disappeared in 2005 and were later linked to the same killer. The final victim was discovered on January 1, 2007. 25-year-old Genesia Levette Peters was found dead, her body wrapped in a garbage bag and left in an alley off Western Avenue. She was the last to die at Franklin's hands. The Los Angeles Police Department had never completely forgotten the case. Advances in DNA technology had linked the earlier murders to one another, establishing that a serial killer was at work. But without a suspect, they were hunting a ghost. Everything changed with a breakthrough that seemed to come from nowhere. In July 2009, Franklin's son Christopher was arrested for carrying a weapon. As part of the booking process, his DNA was entered into the state database. It was a partial match to DNA found at the crime scenes. In genetic terms, the match was too close to be a coincidence, but not close enough to be the killer himself. The son could not have committed murders that happened before he was born, but his father could have. The LAPD now knew they were looking for a close male relative of Christopher Franklin. Through records and investigation, they identified Lonnie David Franklin Jr. as the likely suspect, but they needed definitive proof. An undercover operation was launched. A police officer got a job as a busboy at a local pizza restaurant where Franklin was known to eat. On July 3, 2010, that officer watched Franklin attend a birthday party at the restaurant. When Franklin left, the officer collected the leftover crust from his pizza. The DNA matched the samples from the murders perfectly. On July 7, 2010, 25 years after his first suspected murder, police arrested Lonnie David Franklin Jr. at his home on West 81st Street. Inside that home, they would find evidence that would paint a chilling picture of the man they had been hunting. In Franklin's garage, investigators discovered a cache of photographs. There were 180 images of women, many of them in the same South Los Angeles neighborhood where the murders had taken place. Some photos showed women sleeping, or drugged, or unconscious. Some appeared to show women who might already be dead. Among them were known victims of the Grim Sleeper, frozen in time, forever linked to the monster who had taken their lives. Investigators also found identification cards belonging to victims Ayala Marshall and Rolania Morris, items that should never have been in Franklin's possession. In his refrigerator, they discovered a photo of an unidentified woman in compromising circumstances. The evidence was overwhelming. Franklin was charged with 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The trial began in February 2016. For 3.5 months, jurors heard horrifying testimony from Anitra Washington, who had survived her attack and finally came face to face with the man who had tried to kill her. They saw the photographs taken from his garage, heard about the DNA evidence, and listened to detectives explain how a routine weapon arrest had led them to one of Los Angeles's most prolific killers. On May 5, 2016, the jury convicted Lonnie David Franklin Jr. of 10 murders and 1 attempted murder. A month later, on June 6, 2016, the jury returned a verdict of death. And on August 10, 2016, exactly 31 years after the death of his first confirmed victim, Deborah Jackson, the Los Angeles Superior Court formally sentenced Lonnie David Franklin Jr. to death. Franklin was transferred to San Quentin State Prison, home to California's death row. For nearly 4 years, he sat in a cell, waiting for an execution that would never come. California's moratorium on the death penalty meant that despite his sentence, his life would end not in the execution chamber, but in the same way he had taken so many others, in silence and mystery. On March 28, 2020, prison guards found Lonnie David Franklin Jr. dead in his cell at age 67. There were no signs of trauma. No cause of death was ever publicly released. The monster who had stalked South Los Angeles for over 2 decades, who had taken at least 10 lives, and possibly many more, was finally gone. But the story does not end with his death. The 180 photographs found in his garage haunt investigators to this day. Some of those women have been identified as victims of his crimes. Others remain unknown. Were they survivors? Were they women he had drugged and photographed before releasing? Or are they victims whose bodies have never been found, whose names have never been spoken, whose families still wait for answers? The case of the Grim Sleeper stands as a landmark in forensic history. It proved that familial DNA searching could crack cold cases that had stumped investigators for decades. It showed that technology could reach across time to identify killers who believed they had gotten away with murder. But it also stands as a stark reminder of how long evil can operate when its victims are marginalized, when their lives are deemed less valuable, when their disappearances barely register. For years, the families of the victims marched, protested, and demanded that the Los Angeles Police Department take action. They were told that their loved ones were just prostitutes, just drug addicts, just throwaway people. But they were not throwaway people. They were daughters, mothers, sisters, friends. They were human beings with hopes and dreams and futures stolen from them. Let us speak their names once more. Deborah Jackson, Henrietta Wright, Barbara Ware, Bernita Sparks, Mary Lowe, Latrica Jefferson, Inez Warren, Alicia Alexander, Georgia Thomas, Princess Bertha Mew, Valerie McCorvey, Genesia Peters, and Ayala Marshall, and Rolania Morris, and Thomas Steele, and all the others whose names we may never know. The grim sleeper has left this world, but his crimes echo through the streets of South Los Angeles. For every family that received a measure of justice, there are others still searching for answers. For every victim whose name we know, there may be dozens more hidden in those photographs waiting to be identified. Lonnie David Franklin Jr. lived as a shadow, hiding in plain sight among neighbors who never suspected the monster next door. He worked, he worshipped, he raised a family, all while carrying the darkest secret imaginable. For over 2 decades, he evaded capture, confident that his crimes would go unpunished, that his victims would be forgotten. He was wrong. This has been a Secrets Uncovered deep dive. Thank you for listening.